Hi, it's Cara. Today I'll be talking about how I sketch and render my art pieces. It's like a really lazy technique because you don't need to do any line art, just like a clean sketch. So yeah. So let's get into the actual brushes and such. For the rendering, like shadows and things, I use a round brush. It's actually a brush that was created to look like a side shading brush, but really you can use any brush that has opacity settings. The reason I use a brush with an opacity setting on it is because I don't tend to use the blending tool to do my shading because it makes the shadows look too blurry, which can just make the overall piece look too blurry. But if that's what you want, you can go for that. Here I am showing the opacity of the brush. You can lower it really low and it'll barely show, so you can get more blended shadows, or you can have it just a bit low and have some darker shadows. You don't need to use a round brush for this. You can use a square brush, you can use a tapered brush, but I prefer the round brush because it just makes doing shadows and things like that easier. Here's the brush. It's called the Side Brush Line Art and Shading. You can get it for free. With this brush, you can do thinner lines, you can do thicker lines. I just really like how it works. It's really useful for what I need when I'm doing my art. When I blend, I tend to stay away from the multiply layer. I just use the color picker a lot and make like a darker color, and I will go over the shadow multiple times so it looks smooth. I have two other brushes that I use. I use more than that, but these are the ones that I use the most, and I'm going to show them in the speed paint that I did for this tutorial. I have this brush with a hair-like texture. It has some strand details on it, but not too much, so where it will look stringy and awkward. I have no idea what this hairstyle I'm drawing is right now. It's something I made up. It's kind of bad. And for the finer details, I'll use my side inking brush. It's really good for doing sketches. You can draw eyelashes with it. I just do it for anything that's not really shading or when I don't need a bigger brush. I don't know why I put the eyes so far away like that. When I render, this is all the detail that I'll really do for the sketch because I'm just gonna go over it. Now, when I do paint over, I don't keep it on the same layer as the sketch, so I can go back and erase stuff if I messed it up, and I can have the sketch if I want to restart the drawing if it just goes terribly wrong. Here, I'm just fixing up the sketch a little bit so I can go over it because her head was ginormous. Now to shade the nose, I pick a darker color for the skin to make a sort of triangle shape. Then I will erase the middle out of it and the sides a bit to blend it a little bit. And then I'll place a shadow under it to give depth and like a 3D feel to it. For the lips, you could do it with an airbrush, but I just use this round brush and use the Gaussian blur to make it blend into the skin. And I place a darker color in the middle and I outline the lines of the mouth. And I shape the lips a little bit more because I like how they're shaped. And then I add highlights to the lips, nose, and eyes. And here I am going over the sketch of the skull and adding blush to the face to make it look more natural and alive. And I'm blending out the darker shadow I did on the edges. Now to shade the hair, I have no idea what I did here. I was not thinking correctly and the shading came out terrible. So this is what not to do. Don't outline it like that. It makes it look like she has like grapes for hair or something. It's like, I don't know why I shaded it like it was round. Here I fixed it and actually shaded to the curves that the skull is shaped in. And for the actual shading of the hair, you want to pick colors that are different but close to the original hair color to give the look of more hair strands than there actually are. I really was so indecisive about the hair. And then halfway through, I just decided to add a body because I thought it was weird that it was a floating head. I honestly don't know why I shaded the neck like that. I just did it really quickly, but I actually kind of like how it looks. Here I am adding a little bit of shading to the shirt to make it look more like, you know, a shirt. And then I'm going to show you a lighting technique that I like to do all the time. It gives like an interesting feel. And before you go, why are you covering her in purple? Let me cook. To do this, you want to set the Gaussian blur however much you want it to blend, and you want to put it on the multiply layer. And on the other side, I'm doing a bit of rim lighting. I did it with a greenish shade, but then changed it to pink because I didn't like it, and I did that on an ad layer. Okay, now that I ran over the basics of how I render, I'm gonna go over the finished piece with Newbie Lit. By the way, credits to whoever made this pose. I found it on Google and I can't find the original artist, so if you see this, thank you very much. I just changed it a little bit to get that, inquisitive look to him. But here I am sketching the hair out, getting the overall flow of it. And when you draw hair, you want to think of it as sections. Like, think of it like bananas. You don't want to think of it as individual strands. When you're doing the sketch, you really don't need to put this many strands in the hair. I just like to do it so I know where the flow of the hair is. Now I'm sketching out his clothes, doing his fancy collar. This is what happens when you draw Hoyoverse characters. They have a million zillion details and they are really hard to draw, but when you're done with the piece, it comes out like really beautiful, so it's worth it. Now that I'm done with the details of the hair and clothes for the sketch, I'm going to do the sketch of the face to bring the whole sketch together. At first, I could not figure out the angle that the eyes should go, so just bear with me. I don't know what was happening. See, don't be like me. You should always use a reference when you're drawing. I don't know why I didn't. I just drew this from what I had remembered, so. And then I give him the strange curve to the eyebrow and just take it away immediately because I realize it looks silly. Now, when you're coloring your drawings, then you never want to have a white background because it makes it easier to see gaps like in the coloring. And this man has white, grayish hair, so imagine how hard that would be to see on a white background. But now you just want to lay in your base colors. Then I paint some placeholder shading on the face just to get the feel of how I want it to look later. Now I'm painting over the sketch of the hair to make it look more fluffy. Don't do like I did at first and add too many extra strands to the end of the hair because it makes it look unnecessarily stringy. And then I'm drawing more placeholder shading for the hair because I don't like to render one place for a long time. I like to move around and render different things, so I add placeholder shading. Now I'm going to draw over the little clip he has in his hair holding the feather. And something that could be useful for you all is to draw, like, you don't have to do it as a sun like I did, just put where you want your light source to be so you know how to shade the things. And don't be scared to go over your sketch because you can always erase it, but trust me, if you don't have fear of going over your sketch, it's going to come out really good. However, if you don't trust in your ability to draw over the sketch, you're going to end up with something like this. This was from a few months ago when I was first learning how to render, but it looks very bad. That's why you don't want to be scared to go over your sketch. Now I'm going to render the face, and for the face, going over the sketch matters the most here because it can make such a difference. Now when you add shadows, you could put them hard like I did first here and go over them with the skin color with your brush opacity lowered, or you could just do them with a soft opacity to begin with. It depends on how you prefer to do it. Something that can give your art piece even more life is how you shade the eyelids. You want to shade by the front of the eyebrow, the back of the eyebrow, and leave some shine and highlight in the middle. It'll make it look more 3D. Here I paint over the sketch of the nose and jaw to make the lines look thinner, or for the nose, just blend into the face even more. Then I do the details for the ear, which I cannot draw ears for the life of me. I don't know why. I like to add red under the eyelids because I find it just makes the drawing pop and look more alive, and I place highlights in the middle of the bottom eyelid. It took me a million years to realize that he wears gloves, which is another reason why you should get a reference, because here I am looking silly rendering the hand. Now, I could have just left it like this and it would have been fine, but later I just change it. Then I add more shadow to the ear to give it even more depth. Now I'm going to render his eyes. For the eyes, I keep them on a separate layer from the base colors, and I'll do a clipping mask so I don't draw over the iris. Now here's where I realized that I do not like the hair, which is a recurring thing in this drawing. And I also realized that he's supposed to be wearing a glove, so I changed it. For the hair, I was scared to go over the sketch for some reason. I don't know why. But eventually I just do it because I realized that it's not gonna hurt if I don't like it. I can just always just redo it. And I add the little diamond shaped things he has on his gloves because I forgot to add those too because I'm so silly. I do end up liking the hair the more that I add shading to it. It ends up looking fluffy like I wanted it to. Here I test out some highlights on the hair with the add blending layer. And I shade the diamonds on his knuckles. But on the bright side, Nubia doesn't have many folds on his clothes because he has on a suit jacket and, you know, they iron those so there's no wrinkles. So I was very happy about that. But for real though, drawing wrinkles is not as hard as it looks. You just really need to use shadows to create the effect of wrinkles. Because here's the thing, for small details, I don't do them. I just create the illusion of there being small details. I also removed the sketch from under the hair because I found that it was just in the way. Now I'm doing the eyelashes. On another note, I really wanted to thank you guys for 200 subscribers. I'm really excited that you guys like my content, and I hope that from here on out I can bring you guys new and fun content. And next time when I do like a drawing tutorial of this sort, I will try to record the drawing process, but that would have been hard for me to do because the drawing took 12 hours. I had a bit of a blue shading to the white part of the hair because he has a blue theme, so it just makes everything look more cohesive. Here I use another reference picture to try to get the feather to look a bit more accurate. Then I realized that the outfit was not centered, so I went over it and fixed the proportions of it, which is what I like about this style of art. You can just go over things without having to have clean line art. Like you see, I just added the ruffle to the cuff of his sleeve, which I forgot to add in the beginning. And you're gonna see a prime example of this because I realized the proportions of the face were really off. So instead of having to redo line art, have to make it smooth, I just did a sketch and did the nose again and put everything in the place it was supposed to be because it was really disproportionate and I don't know how I didn't see it till now. I think it's because I have the habit of drawing noses facing to the side even when characters are facing forward, which I really need to stop. So once I fixed the nose and lowered the eyes because they are way too high up, everything looked good. Man, I was really struggling with these lips. I don't know what was going through my brain, so I just redid them and they ended up coming out good as well. My goodness, poor Nubia, his eyes were just ascending into space and I didn't even see it. I should have just did the lips with an airbrush because I was struggling again. But after using the Gaussian blur, I get them how they're supposed to be. And then, along with the theme of ascending into space, I realized that his hairline was also ascending into space, so I brought that down some more too, so it didn't look silly. Here I am reshading some parts of the face because I had to move things around, but it didn't take too long, so it was fine. Every time I toggle the rendering layer on and off, it's a jump scare because the sketch was atrocious. Here I am making the hair look a bit more 3D, like clusters. I had too many strands drawn on it. But now we're almost finished. Here I go with my silly little lighting techniques. I didn't know how I wanted to do it at first, so I kept redoing it, but I eventually got it how I wanted it to look. I wanted it to look like there was lighting coming from below him, in front of him, and lighting from the room behind him. I add some brighter highlights to some things to make them really shine and pop, but I think it came out great. I hope this tutorial was helpful, and I hope you like the finished piece. It has a grand total of 44 layers. I'll zoom in on some of the pieces of the drawing so you can see them better. But if you guys want any more tutorials, feel free to ask for them. I'll try to make them as soon as I can. And I want to say thank you again for 200 subscribers. I really appreciate it.